My name's Ken Galika. I'm the planning manager with City of Buckeye Development Services Department. I've been working City of Buckeye for about 3 years now, and the entire time been working to implement the City Council's vision for downtown as one of my kind of primary objectives or of my position. So excited to talk to you tonight. So the downtown specific area plan was approved by council less than a year ago, beginning of October of 2023, after the conclusion of about a 2-year, 20-month or so process. So it was a huge effort that was undertaken, and so much, so many meetings along the way and feedback that we received. What does the plan do? Well, the plan, if you're not familiar with it, it guides land uses in downtown. So what types of businesses are envisioned where residential is envisioned, et cetera. It talks about design, what buildings should look like. Public infrastructure improvements, which is the primary reason that we're here tonight, is to talk about the infrastructure improvements to Monroe. Economic development strategies, how to attract the businesses that we all want to see in our downtown, fill up some of the vacant properties or vacant storefronts. Branding, how are we going to kind of create a name for Downtown Buckeye, and much, much more. The plan itself is over 400 pages. If you have a lot of time, I encourage you to read it. It's exhilarating. We do identify in the plan a variety of different implementation steps. So when we undertook this, we didn't want to just create a plan that sat on a shelf where like, oh, this is a good idea, but we don't have an actual strategy to get this done. So everything that we identified in the plan, I believe there's 29 implementation steps in total, are broken down into short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Short-term being things that we can work on pretty much immediately and that we're probably working on right now. Mid-term projects are more in the 4 to 7 year time frame. And then the longer term, 8 years or more. Some of this stuff might not actually be realized for a decade. It's possible. So, how was the public involved when we went through this? What I mentioned was an almost 2-year process for creating the downtown specific area plan. Well, let me just say they were involved more than in any project that I've been involved in my 21 or so years in doing this type of work, planning work. We had a 4,000 recipient newsletter list that we were providing continuous updates on. We notified every single property owner in the downtown boundary, which is just under 1,952 property owners, of the important meetings along the way via postcards that we mailed out. We did a public survey asking, what did you want to see downtown? What don't you like about downtown? What can we do better in downtown? We had an awesome response to that, 865 different survey responses. I might have expected when we started the process, 200 would have been great, and that just blew me out of the water. We had an open house at the church over on Eason with over 400 participants that came to that meeting. 90-person stakeholder group that was involved every step of the way, that consisted of business owners and residents and various folks that have an interest in downtown, as well as the council members that have a special place for downtown. And then the events themselves, 4 stakeholder meetings, 2 public open houses, 2 planning and zoning commission workshops, council workshops. We met with our Buckeye Youth Council to get their feedback, because they're the future of the area, and frankly, they're going to outlive a lot of the improvements that we're working on. So we want to make sure that we're accommodating what they want to see and keep them here in the future. As well as a city council tour that we took of some successful downtowns in the East Valley, Chandler and Gilbert. If folks have had a chance to go out there, you've seen over the last 15 years, both of those downtowns really transform, almost seemingly overnight, from sleepy places, not all that unlike what currently downtown Buckeye looks like, to what they are now, which is great places to go out to dinner or for entertainment and those types of things. Some implementation items, I mentioned there's 29 in total. I didn't want to bore you to death by talking about all of them, but just to give you an example of what they look like. Develop a consensus-built branding plan. So it's something we'll be working on in relative short term. Create a downtown public art program. It's exciting, chance to put sculptural art or murals throughout the downtown area. That's a midterm goal, but actually we might move that up a little bit because I think that's an important thing to the community that I've heard. actively prepare for future downtown parking needs. I don't think we have a shortage right now. There's ability to park downtown, but in the future, as businesses grow and there's more activity down here, we'll probably need more parking. So that's something that we're supposed to do in the midterm. And then design and construct the recommended roadway, streetscape, and gateway improvements, which is why we're here tonight. Talk about Monroe. It's not just limited to Monroe in the plan. It talks about a lot of different streets, 4th Street, even some of the neighborhood streets as far as improving pedestrian connectivity and sidewalks and those types of things. The link on your screen, realize you probably, it's a long link, but if you go to the website, you can find that under the Development Services page as well, if you ever want to see the entire plan. What is the vision? What is the community's vision for Monroe Avenue? So we talked at those stakeholder meetings and along the way. Monroe at the time obviously was 2 lanes in each direction with parallel parking provided along both curbs, both eastbound and westbound traffic. The feedback that we heard in the surveys and the meetings was, first of all, it's too fast. Traffic drives too fast down here. This is not an area that anybody feels necessarily safe crossing the street or walking along. There's a lot of truck traffic that's not stopping at the businesses. They're just using the street to get to State Route 85. How can we make this area friendlier for me to use, me being, the residents that we were talking to, business owners that we were talking to. So we came up with various ideas, and this is the one that had the most support. This is the future of Monroe Avenue being 1 lane in each direction with parallel parking on each side or a parklet lane, which I'll explain what that means in just a second, but also wider sidewalks and some permanent areas for landscaping. In the future, when this is built, the curb will be, the street will actually be torn up and the curb would be relocated, unlike the temporary restriping program that's currently in place. Some people wonder, why don't we just build this now? Why don't we tear up the street, relocate the curb, do the final landscaping now? There's a few reasons for that. The first is the striping approach that we're taking allows us to kind of watch the road. It's almost like a real life laboratory where we can see if there's something that's not working as intended. We can modify the final design. So if we notice over the life of this project, traffic is just really backing up at this intersection, maybe we need a longer turn lane, maybe we need to do something with signal. Those are the types of things we can do as part of the final project without having to tear up any permanent type of improvements. This also allows us to demonstrate the city's commitment to downtown in a shorter term. The final improvements require a lot of money and require a lot of design, which takes time. This type of interim project, demonstration project, allows us to do it quickly. And it does, prioritize the same themes that the permanent improvements will, which is pedestrian safety, aesthetics, beautification of the street with landscaping, as well as slowing traffic speeds down. To get into the specifics of the various stages, this one, most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with by now. This was the restriping project. It is nearly done. There are still some punch list touch-ups. There are a few hatched areas that don't align correctly with driveways. Things that we're fixing that'll be complete in the next 30 to 60 days. But overall, the project has been completed. The paint's been provided. That included a whole list of things. I won't go step by step, but some of the highlights were crosswalk reconstruction, painting of the parklet zones, and then driveway access being hatched so people are not parking in those areas. Kind of an ancillary project to the restriping, you might have noticed that the City Hall parking lot is under construction. This project is adding an additional 34 parking stalls from what the previous configuration was, also providing an additional access into the parking lot off of 6th Street. Cool thing about this the parking lot project also is there will be installing some bollards in 6th Avenue that will be able to be installed and close the street in the event that we have an art fair or festival down here. We want to close the street to traffic, or even maybe during voting season when we have a lot of people that would be parking and crossing the street to come into the building. The next step in the 5 stages is the landscape demonstration project. And this is the stage where I think it'll all start to really look like it's coming together. From 5th Street to 6th Street, just in this initial demonstration stage, on both the north and south sides. So basically just right outside the building here, we will be providing potted trees as well as landscape planters, various configurations, to define those parklet areas, the gray areas, and separate the parallel parking spaces from those areas. It'll really provide a sneak preview of what the interim improvements, which is stage 3, could look like. We expect that to occur hopefully by mid-October. We've already started trying to order some products and get them in. And this is just a graphic on the left, shows you how the street looked about 3 months ago. You can see 2 lanes in each direction, parallel parking, very limited landscaping, very wide stretch of pavement. And then on the right, the proposed condition down to the 1 lane in each direction with the turn lane at the intersection. The gray areas, which are the parklet zones, which will have the landscaping added to them in the future here. So this term parklet, what is that? Like, this is kind of a new idea to most people. You might have seen them in some other downtowns, but maybe you haven't. So that gray area, which is the parklet lane, the portions of the street that have been painted gray, is what we're calling the parklet lane. It's a very flexible space, so it can be utilized in a variety of different ways. It can just be utilized to include landscaping, trees and potted trees and landscape planters to beautify the road and, essentially be a wider sidewalk below the curb. Alternately, a business like you can see in this example, they could build what is called a parklet platform, which would basically be a small deck that would sit flush with the curb. And if there's a restaurant adjacent to it, it would be an extension of the business, essentially. So you could have your tables for outdoor dining within the right-of-way, giving the businesses some additional space. If it's a retail business, you could use this for merchandise display, sidewalk sales, those types of things. Just some examples of parklet lanes elsewhere. The top 3 images are all just parklet lanes without platforms. You can see all those areas where this kid is riding his bike. This used to be travel lane. Now, wherever this is just a much wider pedestrian kind of promenade area. Traffic's restricted by some kind of concrete bollards. Here, just pedestrian seating where there used to be travel lanes. And then this is kind of an example of using it for bike parking, but also a platform. Now, these are all the kind of business activated spaces where you have outdoor dining or just outdoor seating. It doesn't even necessarily need to be associated with a business. The city could do one of these outside of City Hall, just as create a seating area that just the general public could use. As part of the demonstration project, in addition to adding the potted trees and landscape planters between 5th and 6th Street, we have ordered one of these kind of pre-assembled, or actually it's not assembled, we have to assemble the pre-manufactured kits for a parklet, and we'll be placing this out in front of City Hall. We're also looking in the future at potentially doing like a contest for area residents to design a parklet, and then the winner's design, the city would try to build that and place it in front of the City Hall. Stage 3, which is the interim landscape. How is that different than the demonstration project? Well, the big difference is the scope. So this will extend all the way from Miller down to 9th. So it won't just be the block out here in front of City Hall. It'll basically be installed in all the gray areas from Miller to 9th. Before we get too far in that, we will be soliciting a lot of public input. We have hired a consultant to prepare 3 different potential options for what trees could be used, what types of planters could be used. And when we have those options, we will have another one of these types of meetings where we will, let you kind of choose which one you like the most, give us feedback. You could say you don't like any of them, and this is your suggestion. We'll take any sort of feedback. at that point in time. The interim landscape will be installed in phases, so it's not necessarily going to be done overnight from 1st to 9th, but will remain in place until that permanent improvements, which I showed, are completed. Stage 4 is not as pretty, but it's stuff that downtown definitely needs and is a investment that the city will be making into downtown's future. There are pretty well known, I think, flooding issues in the downtown. There are necessary storm drain improvements that are needed in the area to rectify some of the impacts of storms when they occur. There's also need for more fiber for enhanced services and communication and all the stuff that technology requires these days. We're looking at grant funding for a portion of this project, and because the possibility for grants to be used, we're not quite sure when that money would be available or not. Ideally, it would be at the same time that we're actually doing the physical reconstruction of Monroe, so we don't have to rip the sidewalk up and then it's back open and then we're ripping it up again a couple weeks or years later. But a lot of that will just depend on the timing of those grant funds. And then back to where I kind of started the presentation at, the full street is stage 5. When stage 5 is done, the street will be ripped up. The curb is going to be pushed in from where it currently is. The gray areas would then, they go away, and now you just have an actual wider sidewalk. There's still an opportunity in the permanent improvements to have the parklets in the place of parallel parking. I mentioned one of the reasons we're doing it in kind of this phased approach is to allow for us to observe the project and how it functions, to tweak the design. Like I said, maybe a longer turn lane. Heck, if the worst case scenario happens, maybe we need a turn lane the entire length of the road. I'm not seeing it yet, but we'll continue to monitor that. I talked about the outreach during the DSAP process, but we've also tried to get information out about the downtown improvement projects themselves. We have a project website, which I'll have a QR code for at the end of the presentation. We've done mailings to property owners within the affected area. Our public relations marketing folks have done a lot of social media posts to talk about project updates. We've used the digital messaging signs, which are the signs that you see during construction. The street's going to be closed from this to this to try to create awareness as well. And the speed limit changes downtown as well. Door-to-door canvassing of businesses. Our economic development team has gone to, I think, every single business, or at least attempted to. 160 some, I believe, that are within the downtown area, and talked to each owner, or at least attempted to. Additional outreach that we have planned. We're going to, of course, continue all the methods that we've been doing. But we're also going to be placing some A-frame signs in the gray parklet areas that contain information on the project, basically how to use this project if you weren't here tonight and don't necessarily understand what areas for what. We're going to be doing educational flyers that if we notice somebody parked in the gray zone, we can put it under their windshield and say, hey, did you know you're supposed to park here? It's not a ticket, promise, at least not immediately. And then future community meetings for input that I mentioned. The next opportunity for that would be, I don't know the exact date yet. My guess is probably October. Could be late September when we seek input on the interim landscape. There's a section on the city's website, the same website that has the videos, that talks about some frequently asked questions. What have the public, either on social media or in person when we've had conversations about the project, what are the most common types of concerns or questions that they've had? There's a lot more than this list. These are just probably the ones that I picked because I've heard the most personally. How will these improvements attract more people downtown? That's part of a strategy, right? Most downtowns, at least the successful ones, all have kind of a certain feel to them where you are comfortable walking along the sidewalk, crossing the street, going to another shop over there, crossing back over the street. You feel comfortable. You feel like you're in a place where you can enjoy yourself, where there's shade, and it's something that appeals to your eye. So this is the first step in attracting the businesses that like to locate in those areas that people find attractive. So it's really the first step in becoming, hopefully, the downtown that our residents in the area, residents throughout the city really, could be proud of and come to for a night out on the town, or just for a lunch. Will the reduction in lanes combined with new development, because there is new development occurring in downtown, especially I'm sure most people have seen the multifamily development just next to the post office. There's the other one on the other side of town over at Eason. How will all of this combine to work with traffic congestion, emergency response? The answer is, and I hinted at it earlier in the presentation, Monroe Avenue shouldn't, in the community's view, as far as what we heard during the DSAP preparation, function as a through street. We want people that are using Monroe Avenue to have a purpose of visiting a business on Monroe Avenue or going to their home a block off of Monroe Avenue. But there's really no benefit to the community of traffic that's just traveling from Phoenix to San Diego, just passing through and not stopping at any of the businesses. So we've created a truck route that would reroute the traffic that doesn't have any intention of utilizing any of the services downtown. We want, again, the traffic on Monroe to purely be local traffic. As far as emergency response, there's a lot of streets down here. It's a grid network. In the event that Monroe is a little backed up, police, fire have a lot of different opportunities to get to various locations in the area. Doesn't the new truck route go through neighborhoods? No. The new truck route does pass by the backs of some neighborhoods, like any arterial street does. That's not an uncommon condition. But this new truck route, which goes down to Hayes and Beloit, actually goes by a lot less residences than what the Monroe truck route previously did. So in terms of impacting residences, there's actually less of an impact now than what there previously was. So what's the ultimate vision? This is paraphrasing from the actual vision statement in the plan. This is kind of dumbing it down and simplifying it, but it's really to be a great place, not just to visit for a night out, but to live, if you're inclined to do that, live in the area. A lot of trees and shade, so that even when it's 115 degrees out, it might not be comfortable, but at least it's bearable. Safety for pedestrians and vehicles, where they can share the road together. Housing options, different types of single-family residential, multifamily residential for all young folks and for older folks and everywhere in between.